Hey friends, welcome or welcome back. My name is Shannon, and today I'm coming at you with a book haul. Everyone loves a book haul. Well, I certainly love a book haul. I love watching them and I love hauling them. So last weekend I drove up to Maine to visit a college friend, and we were just going to spend the day together. I had limited time with her because she had to arrange for some childcare, but we spent a lovely day together in Bath, Maine, having lunch, doing some book shopping, having some coffee. It was an absolutely lovely day, and I have a couple of books here to show you. So, since I was already going north, I decided to stop in Burlington at the used book Superstore to drop off some books that I wanted to trade in for credit. And of course, I immediately used that credit. So let's start in no particular order. This first one is The Wife of Willesden by Zadie Smith. So you may know Zadie Smith as the author of White Teeth and On Beauty and lots of other books. I've only read White Teeth and On Beauty. This is actually a play. I saw a production of this play in Cambridge, Massachusetts when it came through town a couple of years ago, I think. I saw it at the American Repertory Theater in Cambridge. Absolutely loved it. It's basically Chaucer's The Wife of Bath, but instead of Bath, it's The Wife of Willesden. And it was absolutely fantastic production. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And she used a lot of, if not most, of Chaucer's pretty much original language. So it was absolutely fantastic. So I wanted a script for myself. And this edition here has not only Zadie Smith's script as to, what was performed on stage, it also has the original Chaucer script in the back. And so you can go back and forth and see the difference. So yeah, Zadie Smith, novelist turned playwright. I'm here for it. Okay, next I got The Good Soldier by Maddox in this Barnes and Noble edition, and I love Barnes and Noble classics editions. I have a whole collection of them, and I have been looking for this one for a while because I don't think it's any longer in print, so I've been looking for a used copy just because I love this cover so much. And I wanted this edition of this book, and I found it for $3.98. So I'm very happy. And as a bonus, someone annotated the heck out of it. I don't know if you can see there. And I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled. I'm going to get some literary criticism while I'm reading this. This person annotated like so many pages. So I'm actually very excited to check this out. So this was first published in 1915. Handsome, wealthy, and a veteran of service in India, Captain Edward Ashburnham appears to be the ideal good soldier. But for his creator, Maddox, he also represents the corruption at society's core. Beneath Ashburnham's charming, polished exterior lurks a soul well-versed in the arts of deception, hypocrisy, and betrayal. Throughout the 9 years of his friendship with an equally privileged American, John Dowell, Ashburnham has been having an affair with Dowell's wife, Florence. Unlike Dowell, Ashburnham's own wife, Leonora, is well aware of it. Interesting stuff about Edwardian England. So I've been collecting most of Shakespeare's plays in certain editions, mostly in the Folger's Shakespeare Library editions, but I also get companion copies of the same plays in these No Fear Shakespeare editions. So this here I have Taming of the Shrew, and I have The Merchant of Venice. And I already have a Folger's Shakespeare Library edition of The Taming of the Shrew. I don't yet have one of The Merchant of Venice. As I'm rereading Shakespeare's plays, I read the Folger's edition alongside the No Fear edition. And that's because the No Fear really does give it in, I don't want to say contemporary vernacular, but just makes it a heck of a lot easier to understand what's going on, while the Folger's library has tons of literary criticism and other notes that the No Fear Shakespeare does not include. So I like to read them in tandem. And so I got two more that I didn't have, and these were $5 each. So not too bad. And then excellent condition, practically brand new. I don't even know if anyone opened these. Next, I got The Hidden Lives of Tudor Women, A Social History by Elizabeth Norton, and this is nonfiction about Tudor women. I'm assuming it's going to be Tudor regular women, not just queens. We all know I love a Tudor queen, but it would be nice to learn a little bit more about people on the fringes. Historian Elizabeth Norton explores the life cycle of the Tudor women from childhood to old age through women such as Elizabeth Tudor, Henry VIII's sister. There's not a whole lot of biographies about Henry's sisters. They've been sort of left out of history. Cecily Burbage, Elizabeth's wet nurse, Mary Howard, and Elizabeth Barton, a peasant girl who would be lauded as a prophetess. So yeah, interesting stuff to add to my Tudor history collection. Another nonfiction, and this is actually pretty new. I think it was published in 2025. The Blood Countess, Murder, Betrayal, and the Making of a Monster by Shelley, Puhak. So this is basically true crime and feminist history about the woman alleged to be the world's most prolific female serial killer. There have been long whispers coming from the castle, from the village square, from the dark woods. The great lady, a countess, from one of Europe's oldest families, is a vicious killer. Some even say she bathes in the blood of her victims. When the king's men force their way into her manor house, she has blood on her hands, caught in the act of murdering yet another of her maids. She is walled up in a tower and never seen again, except in the uppermost barred window, where she broods over the countryside, cursing all those who dared speak against her. And so this woman's name is Elizabeth Bathory. I've actually never heard of this person before, so, you know, love me some books about women. I support women's rights and I support women's wrongs. This next one also is pretty new, and it just got longlisted for the Women's Prize, I believe, and that is The Correspondent by Virginia Evans. And this is already making its rounds on BookTube. People are reading it, people are liking it, and I decided I would pick it up for myself. I understand it's in epistolary format, which I love me an epistolary format book. So it's written in letters, and I don't know too much about it. I just know that these letters are written by a woman throughout her life. We'll see what happens. And again, a brand new hardcover that I did not pay full price for. I paid $18 for this one. You know, not super, super cheap, but the cover price is $28. So I got some money off. Language as Liberation, Reflections on the American Canon by Toni Morrison, with introduction and notes by Claudia Brodsky. And so from what I understand, this is just a collection of Toni Morrison's lectures from when she was a professor at Princeton. Toni Morrison interrogates America's most famous works and authors, drawing a direct line from the Black bodies that built the nation to the Black characters that many of the country's canonical white writers imagined in their work. Morrison sees these fictions as a form of creation and projection, arguing that they helped manufacture American racial identity. These Africanist presences are, quote, the shadow that makes light possible, as Morrison writes, and the reflections of the author's own deepest fears, insecurities, and longings. And when I looked at the table of contents, Morrison goes over such authors as Edgar Allan Poe, Melville, Hemingway, Willa Cather, Carson McCullers, Harriet Beecher Stowe, Mark Twain, Gertrude Stein, William Styron, William Faulkner, and Saul Bellow. So it's going to be fascinating stuff. I'm very, very much looking forward to digging into this. Meg, Jo, Beth, and Amy, The Story of Little Women and Why It Still Matters by Anne Boyd Rue. And Little Women, one of my favorite books as a child and still as an adult. In this book, Rue recounts how Louisa May Alcott came to write Little Women, drawing inspiration for it from her own life. Rue also examines why this tale of family and community ties, set while the Civil War tore America apart, has resonated through later wars, the Depression, and times of changing opportunities for women. So I know Little Women very well. I've read it several times, but I've actually never read any books about Little Women, so this will be my first. The last book that I got at Used Book Superstore is Flora MacDonald, Pretty Young Rebel, Her Life and Story by Flora Fraser. I've been looking for a hard copy version of this for a long time. I didn't really want to buy it new. I wanted to buy it used, but I wanted the hard copy version, and I finally found it for only $7. Lucky me. And so this is a biography of the remarkable young Scotswoman whose bold decision to help Bonnie Prince Charlie, the Stuart claimant to the British throne, evade capture and flee the country, which has become the stuff of legend. So this is a Jacobite book. And I'm very, very interested in that period of history because I don't know a whole lot about it, but she sounds like an interesting woman, so we will see. Okay, so that's it for the used book Superstore. I then drove up to Bath, Maine, where I met my friend. We had a lovely lunch in the little town square there. It's the cutest little town. If you've ever been, let me know, but it's absolutely adorable. And there are 4 bookstores within like feet of each other, and it is absolutely fantastic. And 3 of them were used, and the 4th one was new books, and I was just thrilled. I just love used bookstores. So the first one we went to was the library bookstore, and I believe it is just the bookstore for the library across the street. And this is where I found 3 books that I'm very excited about, and they were all used. The first one is this NYRB edition of A High Wind in Jamaica by Richard Hughes. And I love NYRB books. And when I see them out in the wild, specifically used, I generally pick them up. I don't always. I have to like the premise of the story. I don't just pick them up willy-nilly. But this one I've actually been on the hunt for because I'm pretty sure it was referenced in a book that I recently read, Diary of a Provincial Lady. I'm pretty sure it was referenced in there. And I was so interested by it. I was like, I have to find this book and I have to read it. And I have it. So what is it about? The dreamlike action of this masterpiece of concentrated narrative begins among the decayed plantation houses and overwhelming natural abundance of late 19th century Jamaica. It then moves on to the high seas as Richard Hughes tells the story of a group of children accidentally thrown upon the mercy of a crew of down-at-the-heel pirates. A tale of seduction and betrayal, of accommodation and manipulation, of weird humor and unforeseen violence, this classic of 20th century literature is an unequaled exploration of the nature and limits of innocence. So, pirate story? Then I found In Search of Hannah Crafts, Critical Essays on the Bondwoman's Narrative, edited by Henry Louis Gates Jr. and Hollis Robbins. And this is a companion to 2 books that I already have, The Bondwoman's Narrative, which possibly may be the first novel written by a Black woman in the United States. It would have been written secretly in the 1860s. And from what I understand, Henry Louis Gates Jr. found this manuscript somewhere and was determined to find out who wrote it because Hannah Crafts is actually an alias. It wasn't this woman's real name. And then I have another book by, I've already forgot the name of it, by Gregory Hemovich or something like that. And he's talking about the process of finding the identity of Hannah Crafts and the writing of the Bondwoman's Narrative. So this here is critical essays about the Bondwoman's Narrative. So now I have 3 books that I want to read together about this book that would have been possibly the first novel written by a Black woman in the United States. And the last book I got at the library bookstore in Bath is The Coquette by Mrs. Hannah Webster Foster. Look at this. And I was very intrigued. So Mrs. Hannah Webster Foster, I knew that this was a novel written many years ago. It would not have been a contemporary novel. And so I was correct. The Coquette, one of the 2 best-selling American novels of the 18th century, tells the much publicized story of the seduction and death of Elizabeth Whitman, a poet from Hartford, Connecticut. Written as a series of letters, love me an epistolary book, between the heroine and her friends and lovers, it describes her long, torturous courtship by 2 men, neither of whom perfectly suits her. Eliza Wharton, as Whitman is called in the novel, wavers between Major Sanford, a charming but insincere man, and the Reverend Boyer, a bore who wants to marry her. When, in her mid-30s, Wharton finds herself suddenly abandoned when both men marry other women, she willfully enters into a relationship with Sanford and becomes pregnant. Alone and dejected, she dies in childbirth at a roadside inn. Eliza Wharton, whose real-life counterpart was distantly related to Hannah Foster's husband, was one of the first women in American fiction to emerge as a real person facing a dilemma in her life. You don't find many 18th century American fiction written by women. It's out there, but it's not as prolific as you find in the UK. I have tons of 18th century female novelists in my collection, but not a whole lot of American. So I'm really intrigued about this. So after the library bookstore, we went a couple of doors down and we walked into another bookstore called Open Door Books. I did not actually purchase anything in this bookstore, but I highly recommend, if you're in the area, check it out. It is a used bookstore, pretty much strictly old and rare books. You go in and there's like this hush. It's almost like a library. Nobody's talking. We're all whispering. The shelves are all crooked. Their books are stacked everywhere. If you like remove one, I was afraid that everything was just going to like tumble down. So I didn't actually touch anything. I was too afraid. The youngest book in that store was probably from like the 1970s. So these books were like 50 years and older. I mean, it was impressive and really great collection. I didn't buy anything in there, but highly recommend you checking it out if you're in that area. So after that, we walked a couple of doors down to the Corner Bookshop. This is another used bookstore. Again, I didn't buy anything in here, but my friend did purchase some children's books. Very cute, very cozy, really great selection. Then the last bookstore I visited on my little Maine book crawl was Mockingbird Bookshop. I believe it had opened pretty recently in the area, and this is an independent bookstore that sells new books. And it was very adorable, very cozy, well curated. The only thing that I wasn't crazy about is that there was a dance class going on upstairs with some kids, and you can just hear them like running back and forth. So I was starting to get a little agitated. So the soundproofing wasn't that great, but really cute store. And I got a couple of goodies here. So I got 2 children's books that I may or may not send to my nephew. I might keep them for myself. We'll see. The first one is We Don't Eat Our Classmates by Ryan T. Higgins. And so this lovely lady is called Penelope Rex. And apparently, did she eat her classmates? I don't know. I haven't read it yet. I'm like super excited. It's Penelope's first day of school and she can't wait to meet her classmates. But making friends is hard when they're so delicious. I mean, I'm really excited about this. And, you know, maybe I'll just have to buy another one for my nephew and keep this one. So we'll see. So that's one that I got, a children's book. I love collecting children's books. They just want to put a smile on my face. I just love them. This next one, another children's book, is called Mother Bruce, also by Ryan T. Higgins. And this is Bruce the Bear. Bruce's dinner recipe calls for eggs, but when the eggs call back, this grumpy bear is in for an unwelcome surprise. Bruce is looking to cook himself some dinner, and Bruce only liked one thing: eggs. He collected them from all over the forest. But Bruce didn't eat eggs raw like other bears. Instead, he cooked them into fancy recipes that he found on the internet. So there is Bruce on the internet looking for some recipes. And apparently he goes out to get the ingredients. So he goes out to catch some salmon. Let's catch some salmon. Then he collects honey from a local beehive. So Bruce is into local and organic ingredients. I'm just so excited to read this one. I really am. So Mother Bruce. And apparently there's a whole bunch of Bruce books. So if I really like this one, I may get some more. Very last book that I got on this little book crawl, Kingmaker, Pamela Harrison's Astonishing Life of Power, Seduction, and Intrigue by Sonia Purcell. At age 20, Winston Churchill's beloved daughter-in-law became a secret weapon during World War II, strategically wining, dining, and seducing diplomats and generals to help win over American sentiment and secrets. So that is it. A lovely, lovely day that I had last weekend buying books, spending time with a friend. If you are up in Bath, Maine, highly recommend visiting the bookstores there in the center of town, having a little book crawl. It was just absolutely lovely. After we bought our books, we went to a little coffee shop and had some coffee. It was a lovely, lovely day. Let me know if you have read any of these. I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for joining, and I hope you have a great day.